right, welcome to Collector Therapy. I'm Eric Maxwell. I'm here with Patrick Hickey Jr. Patrick, how are you?
What's up, man? Happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Awesome, thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
So
man.
you are the writer for the Minds Behind the Games book series and the editor-in-chief at Legacy Comix, as well as the owner, and you're writing a whole bunch of titles. That's awesome. I think I saw your Instagram page. I don't even think it was that long ago, and none of this stuff had started yet. So it looks like a lot of this stuff kind of just fell on top of you all at once, almost. It must have been pretty overwhelming, but also pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's been really crazy. It's like I've been at like this writing thing for like 17 years, and as you know, I started off pretty much as a journalist, but I had written a comic when I was 18, and I'm 39 right now, and I could just never find the right artist. And then the comic book stuff it was like a snowball in Animal Crossing, a couple of kicks, and it's just rolling down a hill, and it's taken on a mind of its own, and it's been so much fun the past 2 years.
Yeah, you've done a lot of work, and I mean, you seem to keep this stuff around your life as well as all the work you're doing, and as well as having a family too. And so, basically, we like to start with why this stuff's so important to you. Like you're kind of a hand in everything, right? You are into the comic book thing, you do the retro video game thing, you do wrestling to sports, retro toys. So, why is this stuff so important to you?
You know what, I feel like when you have like an 18 or a 19-year-old and they're like, oh, I'm into old stuff. That old stuff is the stuff that we're into, like the stuff that we
Right?
were into when we were kids,
Yeah.
so it's just like there's like, for me, really special time in my life was the mid to late 80s and the 90s. Just action figures were freaking amazing. I feel like pro wrestling was so much more fun back then than it is now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
comics were just so good. I mean, I remember the birth of Image Comics. I mean, that has a huge thing to do with legacy, and I never wanted to not be able to connect with that amazing time in my life. And it's like I was getting in an argument with my son yesterday. He's 2, and we're, we were complaining. I was complaining to him that he thought Diamond Dallas Page was Thor, and I'm just like, I had to like take a step back and go, wait, my son's 2 and he loves Thor. So like I think I'm doing a good job as a dad. So that's kind of like where my head's at. I love pop culture. I spent
Mm-hmm.
3 years as an editor at NBC covering, professional sports, the video game industry. I covered 3 seasons of Saturday Night Live, 3 Super Bowls, a presidential election. It's just like I love pop culture. Um I've been writing about film and comic books for, like I said, 17 years. So it's just like I've never not wanted to do this. So
Mm-hmm.
just the fact that I'm able to do it now, and between the writing, I mean, I've written 7 books on video game history. I've gotten to interview like all of the creators of all of my favorite games when I was a kid. I've gotten to interview so many amazing people in comics like David Mack and Mark Miller and David Gibbons and Steve Niles and all these Chris Claremont and all these people that have
Wow.
had like such a huge impact on me. So now I've gotten to take like the lessons that they've told me and incorporate them into my own creativity. So it's been super fun just geeking out and sharing that with my family every step of the way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wasn't aware of how like exactly how much history you had, so it's really interesting. Um, and it sounds like the writing is the core heart of it.
Oh yeah.
And I
Oh yeah.
noticed, I mean, when you kicked Condry off, I was, oh, that's really cool to see someone, start an indie project. Um, and if those of you who are listening who've never read Condry, it's a gritty, street level, edgy noir story, and that sort of character and that sort of story really resonated with me. And I know both you and I are big like Daredevil fans and big Frank
Oh
Miller
yeah.
fans. So I know that was
Absolutely.
probably a huge inspiration. But where else did that style and genre come from? Where did all that inspiration come from?
It's so funny because people like a lot of like I do so many different things that people like when I start telling them where influences come from, they're kind of like, really? And so I've taught college for 17 years. I've taught literature for 17 years. I'm the head of the journalism program at the college that I teach at, but I've taught lit and composition for 17 years as well. And I am a huge Alexandre Dumas fan. So like The Count of Monte Cristo is one of my favorite
Mm,
books of all time. And I love sci-fi, like cheesy 80s sci-fi,
hmm
like The Highlander. And there's a ton there's a ton of Count of Monte Cristo in Condry. There's a ton of Highlander. There's some early 90s Spawn in there. There's some Brian Michael Bendis, Sam and Twitch in there. There's definitely
Hmm.
Frank Miller. There's definitely Sin City. There's some Bastard Samurai from Michael Oeming. So it's just like, it was, I'm 39 and I wrote like the first 5 issues of Condry when I was 18. And then I just had the luxury of like every 2 or 3 years since I was 18, just refining it until I could find the proper artist. And then when I finally did find Kieran X. Quinn, it was just at the point where it was really blended into something strong, because I mean, the 18-year-old me is not the writer that the 39-year-old me is. So I've been able to kind of fine tune that idea, and based upon like just having so many more influences than I did when I was 18. So it started off one way and then it's kind of melded and refined into something that I'm like totally super proud of. So like, yeah, you nailed it. If you like street level heroes, you'll totally dig Condry, but there's a lot more like under the hood of the character. Like I said, it's a lot deeper than people think. And when they start reading like books like Sarita, which is a spin-off, and they find out more about like the other characters that are involved, there's definitely like, if you're into Quentin Tarantino flicks where like every character has their own like specific backstory that leads into the main story, then you'll definitely dig Condry.
Nice. Oh God, it's a lot to unpack. Count of Monte
Yeah.
Cristo. I connect with that. There's something about a simple revenge story
Oh yeah.
that
Oh yeah.
I'm a sucker for.
Yeah, man.
Um, and you put it so well the way like, and I'm not anywhere near your level either in the success of this. Really, as a writer, I have some experience creative writing, but it's like, yeah, you like you said, you start with one idea, and I've just kicked around an idea in my head for the past couple of years that has gone as I've gone to write it. It's started one way and immediately morphed and changed, and then I went back
Yeah,
to it.
man.
Now it's different but the same. So I tell you, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that speaks to me, and all your references too. It's like, yeah, I would have picked all of those as well. I mean, that's everything. That's everything I love at the same time.
Nice.
A lot of, and you blend in a lot of classic literature and with more modern like Sin City with Count of Monte Cristo. Great blending.
Sure.
Um,
Thanks, man.
awesome. Yeah. So, all right. So are you still working on Yeah. You said you're building this brainchild and
Oh
laying
yeah.
it out piece by piece. Where
Absolutely.
are you with it now?
So right now, Condry 5 is in active development. It's being inked and colored as we speak. But then we also have one of the origin one shots, Young Condry, when Willie met Spike, is coming out in like the next 3 weeks or so. So we have both of those 2 issues coming out, and then we also like, I'm basically building a universe, because The Job, one of our other comics, which is about this pro wrestler that loses like every match, but has a hot wife and a hot car, and everyone wonders why, and it's because him and his wife rob banks together. Um, that that takes place in the same universe as Condry, and so we're basically going to get to the point where those 2 stories really start to interweave into one another. So we're working on The Job number 2 right now. So there's a whole bunch of stuff just all happening all at the same time within this universe. So it's so much fun. It's so much fun right now.
Awesome, and it's a challenge to weave in stories and keep the tones and the genres concise. But
Absolutely.
I love the idea of the pro wrestling backdrop. I was never into pro wrestling much growing up, but I somewhat recently read Do a Powerbomb, and I thought
Nice.
it was a
Oh, it's so
masterpiece.
good.
It's so
It's
good.
so good.
So,
Yeah, it's so good.
so like I love that the backdrop for storytelling and that reminds me of like cartoons I used to watch. I think it was called Luchador Mask.
Yeah,
That
man.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
So that's awesome. And then you said you moving on into sci-fi as well. You said the title was Croom. Was that right?
Yeah, so we have Kroom, which it's actually based on a video game that I wrote the story for. It's been in development for quite some time. The guy that created the design for the main character, his name is Pete Paquette, and you may know him. He was the lead designer on not the lead designer, the lead animator on BioShock Infinite.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, man. So I was on his podcast probably after like my first or second book came out, and we just struck it up and started working on this game together. So it's been in development on and off. COVID has kind of slowed it down, but we just released a redo of the Ashcan It actually did really good at the signing today. I'm super proud of that. So it's just like if you like 80s video games like Mega Man and like Ninja Gaiden, you'll totally dig Kroom. But then also like I would probably say away from Condry and The Job, the book that I'm the most proud of is called Brooklyn Bleeds, and it's a zombie book. But the main character of this book is a dog that is stuck in the middle of this zombie apocalypse. So in the first issue, he's basically locked inside of his house with his owner, who he loves, but his owner is beginning to change into a zombie. And the entire book is narrated from the point of view of a dog. So like Thomas smells funny, Thomas is scary, Thomas isn't feeding me, so it's just like it's very surreal and guttural and instinctual, and it's done great so far. It's in black and white, and we added like this kind of like old yellowed paper filter to the pages, with a lot of like there's a lot of cross hatching on the pages and stuff like that, so it looks like a very old comic. We just released the first issue of that and an ash can to go along with it, and that's been doing really well so far too. So we've got a lot of really cool stories that we're telling right now at Legacy Comix.
I like that. That sounds very clever to subvert the expectation of the zombie genre.
Oh yeah.
Change the perspective. I haven't seen that before.
No one
I
ever
didn't
thinks
read it.
about dogs or animals during a zombie
Yeah.
apocalypse, So
Okay.
I was trying to do something different, and I love Beast of Burden. I think that's a really fun comic. I read Elmer by Jerry Anglon. It's about sentient chickens, so that's a lot of fun. So it was just like let's do this. Let's do a zombie book that's different, because I mean, let's be honest, zombie books are never about the zombies. They're about the people. So why
Right.
not? Let's do one about the dogs, or the animals during the zombie apocalypse.
Right. And I want to get into the idea that you are taking a comic book and, for lack of a better phrase, you're making it art again, and
Oh yeah.
you're playing with the format, playing with how it looks, playing with, like we already brought up, the point of view, the way the writing is from a different point of view. Like you're not just making the dog sound like a human; you're making him sound like a dog. It sounds like
Mm-hmm.
he speaks from more of an instinctual place. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, comic for art's sake is something to definitely look into. Are there any? So this is the title you're most proud of right now. What was the name of it again? Say it one more time.
Brooklyn Bleeds.
Brooklyn Bleeds. Okay, I'll have to look that
Yeah.
up. Um, are you aware of? And I'm going to butcher this last name, so I'm just going to
That's okay.
spell it to you. Nick Dr. Hold on. Was it Drs? Yeah, Drnaso is his last
No.
name.
Yeah.
He
No.
wrote a book from. It made you bring up Brooklyn Bleeds, and the fact that you're going in a much more artistic direction than
Mm-hmm.
less of like a flashy popcorn comic direction made me think of this
Yeah.
author. He wrote a book. I'm gonna try to find it here, called Beverly. If you don't mind me asking, where are you from?
I'm from Brooklyn, New York.
Okay, because I
Yeah.
noticed, yeah, we were in the same time zone. Um, right. So Beverly, Massachusetts, is
Mm-hmm.
what the book's about, and it's like, I mean, Massachusetts in general is such a plain place to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's just a lot of highways with trees on either side. There's very little around. It's like everywhere is just kind of like a small town. And he wrote this book called Beverly. And if you I'll put up some images maybe. But
Okay.
the way he illustrates is so, I want to say boring, but it's so on purpose. So
Oh
everything's
yeah.
so flat. Everything's so, the line work is really basic. The angles are incredibly basic. The color palette is really flat. And then he, illustrates a panel of a highway. It's just, a couple of lines, very flat colors, and it nails the feeling of a small Massachusetts town. And so it's like there's nothing exciting in the book, but you're drawn into the fact of the normalcy of it, the fact that almost nothing's happening, but it feels eerie to you. There's a
I
couple of
love it.
moments. Yeah, there's a couple of moments in the book where it's like a little bit shocking, but then it'll pull it back, and you're just kind of left with this unsettled feeling of like something's going to happen, like something has to happen next. some, and it's just there's a whole bit of a family going on vacation, and if you've ever been a kid and you've gone on vacation with your family, you can relate to it, and it's just like nothing happens, but at the same time, you are crawling in your skin because of the feeling it gives you. It's excellent. Um, I'm gonna wonder. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. His first name's Nick. Last name I'm gonna guess is like Drnaso, Drnaso. I
I
recommend
gotta
Beverly to
totally check
anybody.
this out. You
Yeah,
you just
it's
sold it. You sold the hell out of it. So
it's awesome. It's like
yeah,
just
man.
like it made me think of like an indie movie when they always have that shot of the long roadway. He nails
Mm-hmm.
it in a little like 4x4 panel with
Love it.
three colors and a couple of lines. And I'm like, wow, that gives me the same feeling. Um, so yeah, recommendation. All right,
Hell
so
yeah.
you were talking about different things that you reference for your stories. Is there anything you referenced for Brooklyn Bleeds?
So there's definitely like some Night of the Living Dead in there.
Mm,
Um there's definitely some Walking Dead. So the thing was too, the way the book started out was originally my former co-owner, because now I'm sole owner of Legacy Comix. My former
mm,
co-owner was like, "Did you know that Night of the Living Dead is in public domain now?" And I was like, "No, I was unaware of that." And he
mm,
was like, "Oh, we should do a zombie book and do Night of the Living Dead." And that lasted probably about like 2 weeks, because within like the 2 weeks, we had let him go as co-owner, and like, I took over the company by myself. But like, I had written a script that had, the only thing that it had to do with the Night of the Living Dead was like the name. And then I'm not sure if you remember Night of the Living Dead, but it's basically like radiation from like a Mars satellite is like what causes like the zombies or something like that.
mm,
um so there's like a TV screen in the beginning of Brooklyn Bleeds that just says like, Mars satellite crashes on Earth, blah 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 blah. And I kind of played off of that. I won't give too much away, but like I played off of like the origin of Night of the Living Dead a tiny bit, and then the
mm,
rest of it is just like a cross between. I really love like the sense of foreboding in The Walking Dead, that it's just like everything has gone to complete like shit. That like
mm,
that everybody like that everyone is just changed, and like nothing is the same. And but like, it's like Rick is trying so hard to like still be the voice of reason and be the law and be all these things. And it's just like, what if like the only person that was like trying to like stay the same was this dog? What if this dog's like sense of like morality and kinship and love to like to humanity was like the only thing that hadn't changed, like in the midst of a zombie apocalypse? So it's just like this dog is just like put through the ringer in this issue, and it's just like at the end of the day, he just wants like what every dog wants. Like, as I'm doing this podcast, my dog is like 9 pounds. He's laying like on my foot because I have not been home the entire day, and the only thing he wants is like to feel like my foot next to him. Like,
mm,
you can't buy something like that. Like that's something that's like totally earned, and that's like something that's like so instinctual to like dogs, that the way they treat human beings is, it's magical to me. It's just, I love cats, but like, if a dog, like the way a dog feels about you, like it's like almost impossible to like replicate. And there's no way in hell that like humanity, like human beings ever deserve that. No one ever deserves to feel the way like an animal could make you feel, like when you're at like your worst and you just need a pickup. So it's just like, that's something that I wanted to capture, that like the world is like completely going to shit, but like this dog at the end of the day just wants to be loved. And like when his owner makes the change, like he's trying to give his owner like every opportunity to like not kill him, to not, and I won't give away too much more of the story, but it's just like, it's the same thing with The Walking Dead. Like Rick like doesn't want to kill anybody, but it's just like, it just gets to the point where it's just like he snaps. So it's just like, how long is it going to be until this dog like realizes that he's not in, Kansas anymore, so to speak? Or, is he going to find anyone that's going to be able to take care of him? How is he going to take care of himself? He's domesticated. He's on the older side. So it's just like, there's definitely some Walking Dead in there. The new Clementine graphic novel was really amazing, and I love what they did with like simple black and whites. So I communicated that with Carl Antonitz, our our artist on it, and Corey Bird, who did the Ashcan. Like I said, just, it's like what one of my editors at NBC used to say to me all the time, and just keep it simple, stupid. Like just keep it as
Yeah.
simple as possible, and let people's eyes wander, and have dialogue that doesn't tell, that shows, that lends itself to the art. So it was just like kind of like just trying to get back to very simple art, very simple writing that communicates something larger and makes people feel. And I really didn't know how people were going to resonate to it. And then our letterer, Joshua Adams, he just messaged me and he's like, "I hate you." And I'm like, "What's the matter?" He goes, "Dude, I didn't think that I was like gonna cry like for a zombie book." And he's just like, "Man, that dog, man, that," he goes, "You captured like the relationship that a human being and a dog are capable of having." And I'm like, "That's what I was trying to do, so thank you." So inspiration is just trying to keep it really simple and tell a simple but unique and story with some layers and depth to it. That's kind of like what I was trying to do.
Yeah, and you chose something that is so identifiable and relatable to people already.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everyone loves dogs, first of all, and it sounds
Oh yeah.
like you even made it so that the human audience is going to relate to this dog even more than they might relate to a human main character.
It's funny
And
too because like one of my favorite recent books, I would say, of like the last like 10-15 years is Resident Alien, and I'm not sure if you've read it before, but they just launched like 2 years ago the sci-fi show. And the sci-fi show is good, but it's not nearly as good as the comic. And it's basically about an alien that crash lands on Earth, and he becomes like this detective and da 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 da. By the end of the first arc, you're like, Harry, even though he's an alien, is the most human thing in this
mm,
entire book. So it's just like by the end of like the first issue of Brooklyn Bleeds, you're like, yeah, it's a dog, but holy crap, like I relate to this
mm,
dog. I understand what this dog is going through. So that's kind of like what I was going for.
yeah, definitely. You said Resident Alien. I'll have to save that. To
So good,
bookmark
so
that. Yeah.
good.
Who
Mm-hmm.
published that?
Dark Horse.
Okay. Um, okay. So awesome. I mean, that sounds not only, and I don't want to, I don't know, jinx anything, but it sounds like you've cracked something that definitely has staying power and has the ability to move on to larger and larger audiences. So that's
I
really
hope
exciting.
so.
Yeah.
That's always like the hope. So
Yeah. Right, you mentioned Image Comics. You were big, obviously, into pop culture. I mean, still are, but you were big into pop culture in the, I guess some might consider, like I used to love collecting '90s
oh
Image
yeah.
Comics. Like Savage Dragon
Hmm.
was so much fun.
Oh yeah. Oh, so good.
So a lot of a lot of it, like I think it's all so underrated, and it's got to like make a move back up the curve. But so what do you think about Image Comics now?
Um it's hard. For me, it's kind of like I'm really like a Skybound guy now. I think like
Okay.
the stuff that Skybound is doing. I mean, they're a part of the whole Image umbrella,
Mhm.
and it's just like the Clementine books, really solid to me. They have the Skybound Comet stuff, which is really for like middle school kids. Like my nephew is 14 and he's glued on a couple of series that they have. I really love that they're in the gaming scheme of things now. Skybound has their own gaming publisher. Like you nailed it before too. Do It Powerbomb from Image
Mhm.
is a really special book. I mean, the colors in that book
Yeah.
are just
The,
so freaking pretty. Oh,
the
oh my
energy
god.
the energy in his artwork, it tells the
Yeah.
story for you. Is very little, and like you said before, keep it simple. It's such an
Yep.
important rule in storytelling, and he does it
Yep.
so well. It's so well paced and so
It's so
simple.
good.
It's like, yeah,
It's so
not
good.
excellent.
But yeah, I love Eric Larson too. So like, Savage Dragon, like this guy doesn't get nearly as much credit. So I know everyone loves Todd. And of
Mm,
course they do. I mean, Todd
yeah,
McFarlane's amazing. But like Eric Larson writes, pencils, inks, colors, like does everything by himself.
hmm,
Like I have so much, like if I could draw, because I can't draw at all.
yeah, the
Um,
same, same.
it, it, if I could draw, like I would, that's somebody that I have like the utmost amount of respect for. So like as far as like I go, like as far as writers, somebody like Jeff Johns or Brian Michael Bendis, people that are like super prolific that can write different characters and take challenges head on and stuff. Those are like writers that I really look up to. But like in terms of artists, I mean, that's one of the reasons why Image really stuck out at me in like 92, 93 when I was this 10, 11-year-old kid, because it was the best artists from Marvel all leaving all at the same time. I mean, it was basically like a pro wrestling angle. It was just
Yeah.
like these guys just started like the NWO of like comics. Like they just started this like awesome faction, and it's just like, listen, I know so many artists and so many writers that joke around with me. They're like, "Why do you love Liefeld so much?" And I'm like, "Because," I'm like, guys, listen, this is the thing. You could say whatever you want about his Captain America. You know, you could say anything that you want about the way he draws feet. The bottom line is the guy moved books. The guy sold millions upon millions of books. The guy created characters like Cable and Strife and Domino and Deadpool that are still extremely important characters in Marvel today. His New Mutants and X-Force stuff like totally revitalized those brands and stuff like that. It's like what Todd McFarlane did on Hulk and Spider-Man, huge. What Eric Larson did following Todd McFarlane on Spider-Man. Like, could you imagine Venom without a tongue? I mean, because if Eric Larson doesn't draw Venom, I don't think he has a tongue, you know? So
That's a
and
good
then
point.
and then you go to Mark Silvestri, and you
Hmm.
have the Darkness, which I think is like one of the most
Mm.
underrated comics that Image ever did. I adore that series, but like what Mark Silvestri is doing now on Batman and Joker and Deadly Duo is nothing short
Hmm.
of fantastic. The pencils on that book are so good. The writing, I mean, out of all of them, out of like Todd McFarlane, out of like McFarlane, Liefeld, and Silvestri, I think Silvestri is the best writer. Then if we go to Larson, I think is a better writer than all of them. Um, but I mean, these guys are super talented. Then you get Jim Valentino, who no one even cares about Guardians of the Galaxy until Jim Valentino like completely resurrects it in the '90s and made it like worthwhile reading again. Um, I mean, Will Spertacio's pencils on X Factor. Oh my God! Still to this day, I look at those pencils on his X Factor run, and I'm just like, whew! Like they are so freaking good. The Fade. Could you imagine? Like all these guys copied Will Spertaccio. Like, So I mean, just all of that art really resonated with me, as a kid, and then like I felt like Image really started to like cook when like Bendis started doing like Sam and Twitch, and then like when
Hmm.
Silvestri started doing his thing on on the Darkness, and then what's it called, Jim Valentino on Shadowhawk. Shadowhawk is
Mm.
so underrated, so it's
Yeah.
just those guys. I mean, I feel like they don't get nearly as much credit as they do. Like a lot of people think that they're overrated, but I just think like what was done with Image Comics, I don't think will ever be like duplicated again, like while we're alive anyway.
And they certainly paved the way for the company now, being a huge platform, from my opinion, to bring in newer audiences, new
Oh yeah.
readers, new stories.
Mm-hmm.
They always, I mean, I've talking on another episode. I'm like, it's like they have a new title every single month,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
the writing's always different, genre is always different, artwork is always unique.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely bringing a lot to the table there. And
And
it's
they,
funny
they've
you
hit they've
mentioned,
hit some rough spots too over the years. Like Robbie Liefeld talks about it, like in the late '90s, early 2000s, where they had a lot of girly books, but like they've rebounded well since then. And you're right, it's like every month, it's like something cool is coming out from them.
yeah, it's funny you mentioned Rob Liefeld, and people rag on him. When I was in high school and like college, it was so much fun to find his artwork that obviously circulates online. Is like, look at how terrible Liefeld is, and you mentioned his Captain America or his silly hands or his silly feet or whatever. But now, whenever I find him, I'm like, I to your point, he's so underrated. He has so much
Oh yeah.
dynamic quality in his artwork, so much movement and energy, and it's way more fun than a lot of the stuff that you might see. And I'm like, man, I love it way more now than I did when I was younger.
I feel the same
Yeah.
exact way. Like I was at a comic book store last week, and I listen to this podcast every week because like I walk 2 hours each way to work and back. I'm logging like 30,000 steps a day, so I'm listening to tons of podcasts. And Robbie Liefeld, Chris Jericho, Jeff Jarrett, all their podcasts are on my playlist. And he was talking about Major X, and I decided to pick it up. And I'm looking at the reviews on like Goodreads, and it's like they don't get it. Like it's like Rob Liefeld's books are all about action and like really fun combat scenes and like silly,
Mm.
snarky comments and stuff. It's like a great like 90s romp, and I feel like
Yeah.
I enjoyed it because it made me laugh and it made me smile and stuff. Like if you're going into like Robbie Liefeld expecting like Neil Gaiman, then you're going to be sadly disappointed. But if you go in there and you want to have a good time and smile, then you're going to love his stuff, so it's just people are weird, what they want and what they think, and it's crazy.
Oh yeah, they have to remember who it is they're reading and what they're
Hmm.
good at, where their skill set
Yeah,
lies. So that's
absolutely.
a good point. So what do well, you mentioned you enjoyed that series. Is there anything you're currently reading, currently looking forward to next month for?
I just picked up the issue 4 of the Batman and the Joker, the Deadly Duo, the Mark Silvestri book, and
Yeah,
oh, so good. I mean, he was working on it for 7 years, so like if it was bad, then he would have some explaining to do. But
yeah,
it's so good. I really don't have nearly as much time to read as I would like, and obviously I feel like every writer's got to spend significant time reading. But like
yeah.
I will say that like I've really been going back and doing like deep dives on like Steve Englehart, like Captain America, and like a lot of Roger Stern and John Byrne stuff, and
Mm,
like I've been really like going back and reading like the stuff that I wanted to check out when I was a kid, when I was 8 or 9, because I liked the cover, but I didn't know what the story was about. And a lot of like the older Chris Claremont X-Men stuff. And like I just read for like the third time the Wolverine, the Chris Claremont, Frank Miller Wolverine. Um, so Michael Oeming and Brian Bendis have a new book they just announced. So I'm gonna definitely check that out when they come out. Michael Oeming's been like super awesome to me over the course of my career. Like he's read Condry and given me some feedback, and I've interviewed him a bunch of times for the stuff that he's working on. So it's just like whenever he comes out with something new, I'm always like on top of it. So and then there's a new Resident Alien arc that just came out, so I've been checking that out as well. It's really good. That's kind of like my current like reading list.
okay, cool. Yeah, I've been checking out the Deadly Duo as well. I'd say I've loved every issue better than the last.
I
Um,
absolutely, I
and
agree.
it's yeah, and he's created these moments that uh, it subverts expectations. Obviously, bad things aren't supposed to happen in a superhero book, but then and it makes you go like, and no one spoil anything, but it makes you go like, no, okay, well, we're meant to think that happened. What really happened? Oh
Oh
wait,
yeah,
that's what really happened. Like,
yeah,
okay, I guess we're doing this. But yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's like, did you read issue 4?
I think so. Is that the one on the train?
Yes, the one on the
Yeah.
train. It's just
Okay.
like we won't give anything away, but like the stuff
Yeah.
that happens on the train, it was just I was dying. I was like, that's what we would have expected to happen. I didn't know how they were going to get there, but they did, and I'm happy that that's the way it happened. So it's
Right.
just
And they're
yeah, it's
still
just really
pushing
good
like
stuff.
the buddy cop duo at the same time,
Yes.
so it
Joker's
makes it.
he's
Yeah,
so funny. It's so
that's
funny. And
great.
then the whole thing is like again without giving anything away, Joker has spent a significant time in the Batcave, and I just feel like that is going to absolutely play a role because as of right now we're under the impression that he does not know like what is going on around him, and I just feel like there's no way the Joker isn't aware of like all of the things that are going on around him while he's in the Batcave. So I'm waiting for that to play a role, and if it doesn't play a role, then I find that a lost opportunity. So
Mm. Have you been into Chip Zdarsky's Batman run at all?
no, no, I have to get into it though.
It's
Absolutely,
yeah,
there's just
that's
so much
definitely the next.
Batman out.
Oh yeah, yeah, I understand. it's
So
it's
it's
uh it's it makes your head spin.
yes,
Um,
but yeah, Chip is awesome. So I'll definitely have to check that out at some point.
yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Cool. I had one other question. Okay, so another question I like to put in, and
Mm-hmm.
this connects to me very well because when I was younger, I found myself connecting deeply to like whatever like certain fictional characters,
Mm-hmm.
and like just invested in their stories. So, what sort of characters would you, whether it's current or years ago, did you find yourself just clinging on to?
It's so funny because I have a comic book podcast too, called Talking Comics, and I did an
Mm,
episode probably like a month ago where I was talking about inclusion in comics, and I remember being a kid up until like the age of like 12 or 13. I didn't get like the whole inclusion thing. I just thought like you liked characters because they were cool,
mm,
and I didn't really like take into consideration the color of a character's skin or where they came from. If they were cool,
mm,
I liked them. Like I was a big
yeah,
Luke Cage fan as a kid just because he was just this unbridled ass kicker. I loved
yeah,
him. But it's like, man, I remember the first time I saw Ben Riley as Scarlet
mm.
Spider and he had blonde hair and blue eyes, and I was just like, oh my god, like I'm Scarlet Spider. Like or like I loved Eddie Brock because Eddie Brock is this big, like I'm 6'4", I'm 260 pounds, and it's like Eddie Brock is like the same size as me. He's like a big
Yeah.
boy, and it's just like I always liked Venom because I was like, that's like somebody that like I relate to. So I love those characters. It's funny though too, like growing up, my dad's like 5'9", 5'10", but he's like scrappy, and like my dad always liked Wolverine, and I got that. It was like it's
Yeah.
not the size of the fight, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. So it's just like, um, but yeah, I always love Spider Man. Um, I always loved Venom. I like sometimes I really I liked characters that I'm kind of ashamed to admit that I liked. Like I loved trauma films when I was a kid. So like Toxic Avenger,
Yeah.
um I just love that character for some reason. Like I couldn't explain it. And then like Darkhawk, I love Darkhawk. I love Sleepwalker. Like just these
Yeah.
characters that like Adam Warlock. I freaking loved Adam Warlock when I was a kid. You know, I just thought he was so badass, and it's just like all my friends would be like, "Why do you like Adam Warlock so much?" And it's just like he was, bless you,
Mm,
he was just like this like poet in a way.
mm,
Colossus, the same exact thing. Colossus was just so soft spoken. He was just this big, strong brute, but he was just so well spoken that like whenever Colossus spoke, you had to listen. So it's just like yeah, those were the characters that like I really connected to when I was a kid. The ones that like stereotypes would be like, oh, you're a big guy, so you're not you're not very smart. So you've got something to say. Oh, that's cool. Or just characters that that like looked like me. So yeah, so I
mm,
absolutely positively to Captain America, Steve Rogers, I totally
mhm.
connected to after a while. So yeah,
I,
I hope that answers your question.
it does. I like you brought up the Toxic Avenger. I'm not too
Hmm.
familiar with the Toxic Avenger, but the basic gist I get is it sort of reminds me of certain iterations, not all, but certain iterations of Swamp Thing. Trying to think of a really good example. Just someone you would not expect to be the hero at all.
Oh yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah.
they're just like yeah, they're just gross. They're just like creepy, and they're like, oh god, and then they end up saving the day. There's something about that I absolutely love. I'm trying to think of good examples. Darkman is a good example.
Yeah,
I love Darkman.
Darkman. Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, and just yeah, and like Venom to me kind of fits that mo. Like when if he errs on the side of good, he's a monster, but he's fighting for the little guy. I
I
like
just
that.
feel like for such a long time, like when Venom burst onto the scene in the late 80s and early 90s, he was so good. But then there was like this like 15-year span. And like I remember reading, I think it was the Carlos Way stuff that I just feel like missed the mark. And then when Donny Cates came along and started writing Venom, I was like, this is the Venom I've been waiting for such a long time. He did such a good job bringing that character to light. And then I feel like right before Donny Cates hit it, the whole Mr. Negative Spider-Man run when like uh Eddie Brock was anti-Venom, that stuff
Mm.
was so freaking good to me too. So like that character has so much more depth than I think anyone ever imagined, in the beginning. I mean, think about it too. Venom's origin story is so bad. It's just like he's like a crappy journalist that's like, why are you mad at Spider-Man for being a crappy journalist? Like it like didn't make sense. And then, but now it's just like there's so much more breadth to the character, and yeah, man, absolute carnage, and then King Spawn, not
Yeah,
King Spawn,
Spawn's a pretty obvious example too. Yeah,
yeah, Spawn is another example of that, but like King in Black was
yeah.
just so good, and the introduction of Null, oh my god, I could talk for days about how what an awesome character Null is. So yeah.
And then yeah, and you brought up like the soft spoken or the poetic big guy. So the juxtaposition,
Yeah,
contradicting character types. Have you
sure.
read Gold Goblin at all?
No, no, I have to check that out.
It's
Yeah.
it's definitely fun. I haven't been keeping up with Spider-Man. I think it was into the Amazing Spider-Man. I want to say maybe a few years ago, and just it didn't resonate
Hmm.
with me any longer. But then I picked up Gold. For, like, so my friend showed me the cover of Gold Goblin, and I'm like, really, Gold Goblin? Kind of a weird take. It's kind of lame. Like, well, I got to
Yeah,
read it because it looks lame. Like, I got to know. And I
sure.
read
Yeah.
it, and it's Norman Osborn is an old man who is trying to uh, reinvent himself. He's trying to cleanse himself of his dark past.
Again.
Right, exactly. And so like, okay, he's working on doing that now. He's constantly being haunted by his past. He's in turmoil. And then he puts on a Power Ranger costume and flies around and fights bad
So
guys.
funny.
And then like
Hmm.
takes off the helmet and he's 65 years old. And I'm like, that's something about that juxtaposition of character is so much fun to me. It's like he's
I gotta
trying to
check it
fit
out.
in with the younger crowd. Like he's trying to put on like what the young kids are wearing or some kind of like goofy like that. I mean, they don't obviously go full on to that idea, but these are the
Sure.
background vibes I'm getting of the character,
I
and
love
I'm
it.
like, it's a ton of fun, and every issue is it's not even, I wouldn't even say it's amazing by any means, but every issue is so entertaining, just because he's like, I've been through it. I was the worst of the worst. None of you guys scare me, and he just wipes the floor with with any villain he comes across, and
Love
then
it.
he tries to soften himself and kind of be almost more like a father figure. Really great character transformation. I'm a sucker for the old, too old for this shit, see been
Hmm.
around the block character too. So yeah,
Oh yeah.
fun. All right, man. Well, I'm gonna get back to my family. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
man. Yeah,
Super
man. No
supportive.
problem.
If you get a chance to read Beverly, send me a message. I want to know what you think, because those
Yeah,
are,
I'm definitely gonna check out Beverly and I'm gonna check out Gold Goblin. So
yeah.
thank you for the recommendations.
And I'll check out Alien Resident, and I'll give Skybound a look through. That's because
Some really good stuff.
I went on their website and they helm Invincible. So Invincible is one
Yeah.
of my favorite series of all time.
So good.
So
Hmm.
I'll have to dive back in. All
Yeah,
right.
man.
Um,
Yeah,
all
man.
right. Well, this was Collector Therapy. Thank you very much, Patrick, for coming on, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, man. Take care.